refused to go along with it. As the New York Times puts it, this fight laid bare a disconnect between Trump and his party that could upend their efforts next year to pass transformative tax and domestic policy legislation with the tiniest of majorities. Even as Trump has displayed a laissez-faire attitude to the federal debt and a willingness to spend freely, a number of lawmakers in his party fervently adhere to an anti-spending philosophy that regards debt as disastrous. It is a seemingly irreconcilable difference between a party full of people who have spent the last 2 decades railing loudly against the national debt and this guy.
I call myself the king of debt. I'm the king of debt. I'm great with debt. Nobody knows debt better than me. I've made a fortune by using debt. And if things don't work out, I renegotiate the debt.
What we are seeing tonight is that all the havoc Musk and Trump created was for nothing. Elon Musk and Donald Trump brought on a completely unnecessary crisis for Republicans on the Hill, and Democrats had to be the ones to bail them out of it.
House Democrats have successfully funded the government. House Democrats have successfully stopped extreme MAGA Republicans from shutting down the government, crashing the economy, and hurting working-class Americans all across the land.
If that dynamic sounds familiar, it's because it is. It is literally the story of the 118th Congress, this Congress. Back in September of 2023, the Republican-controlled Congress was teetering on the brink of a government shutdown. And it was Democrats who swept in to rescue the country, with 209 Democrats voting with just 126 Republicans to keep the U.S. government open for business. Again, Republicans were in control of Congress at the time, but they couldn't get enough votes in their own party to avoid a shutdown. And then 45 days later, the same thing happened again. The Republican-controlled House brought the country to the brink of a shutdown right before Thanksgiving, and Democrats once again swooped in to save the day. Here was Democratic Congressman Sean Casten at the time.
I hope you're thankful for that time 45 days ago when you were driving us to the edge of an economic shutdown, and once again, Democrats stepped up, helped you out, and made sure we kept the government open for the American people. I hope you're thankful for that time this week when Democrats once again had to be the adults in the room, didn't throw any punches, but made sure that even though the Republican majority couldn't pass the new Speaker's stopgap measure, we did, and we kept the government open for a few more weeks.
I hope you're thankful. In January of this year, it happened again. Democrats once again had to provide the votes to avoid another government shutdown. Then it happened again in late February, with Democrats once more coming to the rescue. I know, it looks like I'm just showing you the same headline over and over again, but I promise you, these really were separate events from the last 2 years. And it wasn't just government shutdowns. On everything from national security matters to the national defense bill to bipartisan tax policy, Speakers Johnson and McCarthy both relied again and again and again and again on Democratic votes to carry the day, even though their own party was in charge. And now Democrats have done it one more time. But if Republicans are hoping that Democrats will keep bailing them out in the next Congress, the 119th Congress, well, they may be in for a rude awakening. Throughout this Congress and tonight, Democrats have been operating with the knowledge that a fellow Democrat was sitting in the White House. That if Republicans drove the country into a government shutdown, it would be the Biden administration that had to deal with the fallout. But 1 month from today, that all changes. Republicans will control both houses of Congress and the White House. It will be up to them to find a way to govern. And if this week is any indication, that is going to be one hell of a spectacle. Joining me now is Congresswoman Becca Balint, Democrat of Vermont. Congresswoman, thank you for being here. Please help me understand what just happened and what you're taking away as a lesson of the last 72 hours.
Okay, so basically you have a situation where you have a very, very wealthy and inexperienced man who has no idea how to govern, swoops in at the last minute. And of course, I'm talking about Elon Musk, who made some demands of folks in Congress. And he said, we're going to shut down the government until President Trump takes office on January 20th. He laid down the law. This is what's going to happen. And what happened was that 38 Republicans stood up to Elon Musk and to Trump. This is such a loss for this incoming president. He has been weakened by Musk, because it's clear that Musk is the one that is calling the shots. So he says what the game plan should be. Trump catches up a few hours later, and then Johnson backtracks from the deal that was struck. And again, this is another piece. You did a wonderful job laying out how we've been here again and again and again. And the other thing that I want people to understand is we do not know who we're negotiating with. Yeah. Because we make a negotiation and then the deal is signed. We have to come to the floor. This was just hours away from where we're going to vote on the floor, and then everything changes. So we can't rely on Johnson. He is not a man of his word, in the same way that McCarthy was not a man of his word. And so, as Hakeem Jeffries has said, who is it that we're negotiating with? It sure looks like we're negotiating with a boy billionaire who is playing at government. And why is he doing that? Because he's got $15 billion wrapped up in federal programs. $15 billion.
You know, you guys mentioned, I think, what is a very important lesson for Democrats in all of this, which is, what is the point of negotiations? I mean, as you say, this was locked and loaded. This was something that was going to go to the floor and get passed on Wednesday, and then it exploded because an unelected billionaire decided to send a bunch of tweets. With that reality in mind, I mean, how are you thinking about what happens after January 20th when, you know, there isn't going to be a Democrat in the White House? The Republican majority is going to be even slimmer than it is now. And Democrats, I mean, are you going to be as inclined to basically help save the day the next time the Republicans are in disarray, which could be, I don't know, January 21st?
Oh, absolutely. We're going to start in chaos in the same way that this Congress started. I am certain of that. Johnson is going to be fighting for his life to retain the speakership. And so, yes, we are anticipating chaos, but we are united. And I was saying today to a friend in caucus, like, we will be demanding our pound of flesh for what has happened in the last 72 hours. So when they come to us for their giant unpaid for tax break for billionaires to the tune of $4 trillion adding to the debt, they're going to have to come through us. We are not inclined to help them. We are going to go toe to toe, and we are not going to swoop in and save the speaker. He has to make the case to his conference as to why he should lead, and we will be standing strong because the American people did not vote for Elon Musk.
I gotta say,
that is for certain.
I marvel at one of the numbers that was revealed tonight. 38, control room can correct me if I'm wrong, 38 Republicans voted against this bill to save their own hides. 0 Democrats. Not a single Democrat voted against the bill. 34. We're getting more than 30 Republicans voted against this thing. Not a single Democrat broke ranks. Can you talk about that unity? It is formidable, especially in a moment like this, where it's a real, you know, there's a lot of impetus to basically give the middle finger to the Republican Party and say, I'm not going to help you, but not a single Democrat did that.
Because our values demand that we do the hard work of governing. That is why we ran. That is what binds so many of us together in this caucus, is that we are here to do the work on behalf of our people back home. So in my case, of course, I was going to do everything I could to get a deal, because we have disaster recovery money in there that is desperately needed by Vermonters and folks in Hawaii and folks in North Carolina. This isn't a game. That's the thing. It's not a game. This involves real people's lives. And so they're going to have to come through our values. When it's a values proposition, we fight from the heart.
Congresswoman Balint, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a happy holiday season and can get out of Washington, D.C.
I'm on my way to the airport now.
Travel safely.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Joining me now is Tim Miller, co-host of the Bulwark podcast. Tim, I'm so eager to get your thoughts on the debacle that just unfolded in Washington. First off, let me know, Donald Trump hasn't said a thing. He was, quite vocal in recent days. He hasn't said a thing. How do you read that?
Well, I think he's probably upset about this debt limit negotiation, right? Donald Trump was the king of debt, called himself that in the private sector. He was the king of debt during the first term of the first time he was the president, even before COVID, running up an absolutely huge amount of debt. And so he doesn't actually share, the view that some Republicans, some genuinely have, like Chip Roy, and some pretend to have, like other members of Congress, that we need to rein in the debt and cut spending. That's not Donald Trump. He wants tax cuts. He wants goodies to be handed out. And so what he wanted out of this deal was to not have the debt limit hanging over his head, at least during the first 2 years, or throughout the entire term, if he could have gotten it. That was the deal yesterday that the Democrats didn't go along with. Today's deal stripped that. So now he's going to have limitations. He's going to have to negotiate his tax cut next year. That was a real win for the Democrats. I think that's something that Donald Trump's upset about. And I think that the person that should be the most concerned about his silence is Mike Johnson. Yeah. Because that guy's time is ticking. I'm here at a MAGA-Cella conference in Phoenix called America Fest. And I'm telling you, the people on stage here aren't really thrilled with Mike Johnson right now.
Yeah. MAGA-Cella seems like less cowboy boots and lace tops and just entirely different outfits, but we'll get to that in a second.
No flower crowns.
No flower crowns at that Cella. I got to ask, you raised I think, very salient point about the debt limit and how that's going to be a real point of leverage for Democrats once Trump is in office. But it's also the narrative, right? Here's like the first meaningful thing, right? Trump wants his presidency, at least reportedly, he wanted it to start officially after Election Day because he thought the economy was going to soar and he could take credit. If that's the case, this is part of his nascent president's second term as well, which is utter humiliation. I mean, he came out and explicitly said, we need the debt ceiling to be part of it. It's not. And it is at the hands of his own party. And I would imagine for a man that has been feeling his oats, if you will, and has been thinking he has some kind of mandate, this is an indication that there is a real cleave between the president who sits in the White House and his foot soldiers in Congress, who he's going to ask to walk the plank on the issues that they apparently aren't ready to fall on their swords for.
Yeah, and this is an L. Matt Gaetz, who I just saw in the hallway out there. That's the kind of people you got to deal with. That was an L. He had to withdraw. So, already, again, like you mentioned, Donald Trump claims this mandate, right, Alex? And he comes in, and you'd think, I actually would have thought, I was wrong about this, that he would have such control over his own party at this point that people would just walk in lockstep and do whatever he wants. So he takes these two losses. Now you go into next year with a Speaker of the House who is tenuous at best, with an absolutely tiny majority in the House, because Trump has chosen 3 House members to come into his administration, so that you got to have special elections, et cetera. And so what was a 5-seat majority is now 2 seats, at least for a few months. It's going to be very challenging for him to pass anything. And then he's got a co-president in Elon Musk who is making things harder for him. And he's got a bunch of people in the House that are just not inclined to go along to get along. To me, every sign is that this is going to be a total cluster. And, that's encouraging, especially for those of us who had authoritarian concerns. It's kind of challenging to be an authoritarian and not be able to run anything. So those two things are going to be a little tension for him in 2025.